Here in the Daily Space Weather, we view the sun in various wavelengths because, well, it shows different features. And by the way, thanks for tuning into the Smash News Network Least Busted Name and News. We're only bringing you the most detailed solar imagery and comprehensive space weather you'll find in the known universe. Pushing 6 years. So again, we look at the sun in different wavelengths. It shows different features. This is 171 angstroms. It's great at showing the lower corona. You can see all the plasma there aligning around active regions. At least you can see the plasma aligning to magnetic field lines. So we've got a huge filament fest going on. If we add 193 angstroms, you can see some of those great filamentary features, especially these two down here. These are quite noteworthy enough to give them a name on Twitter. So make sure you follow us over there, all over the internet at Smash-O-Mash. Let's switch out the 171 angstroms for 304 angstroms here. Now we've got ionized helium and ionized iron. And this is our favorite wavelength to show filaments. Let's go around the horn here, as we indeed have a very high likelihood of coronal mass ejections continuing today. Let's take a look at the northwestern limb first. Can't rule out the possibility that we would see a significant flare from this active region even still after it has set. It has just recently set in the past few hours. It still does have the capability of producing large flares, even while out of sight. The view of the southwestern limb shows us a great image of the Brian Keating filament, this one up here, and the Nikki Haley solar filament down here. Again, if you want to name filaments after living humans, make sure you join us on Twitter. Follow the hashtag #NameThatFilament. Filaments, an important feature of space weather. It's not just about sunspots. It's also about coronal holes, solar flares, coronal mass ejections, magnetic field reversals, and lots more. Anyway, there's the southeastern limb, and we've got three new sunspots that are likely to get names today. At least 3 new groups currently exist. They've just risen and formed down here around the southeastern limb. So that's always exciting. We've got a very large number of sunspots. And of course, the sunspot number can be a little bit deceptive, as it doesn't necessarily mean big sunspots or active sunspots, but there are certainly lots of them at the moment. Most of them are magnetically complex sunspot groups, and let's move on to take a look at that. Yesterday plus today, here's SDO continuum. I'm sorry, SDO intensitygram. So again, we've got one fairly large group that just rose here, and there are 2 other groups near there that have recently formed or risen. Here's yesterday plus today in colorized magnetogram. And most of those sunspots have been pretty stable here over the past 24 once again, so no major changes happening there. No major degradation or growth yesterday or today so far. And thanks for leaving a comment, a Tin Man 1057. Good morning to you as well. Let's take a look at volcanoes here briefly before we get back to space. We'll cover volcanoes and earthquakes. So we've got the Dieng volcano complex featured here. So that's a new one showing up in the list. We'll get to it here in a minute. First, Abico is producing a 15,000-foot plume of volcanic ash. Looks like an uptick there at Paramushir Island, flight level 150 from Mount Abico. Sakurajima, volcanic ash not identifiable in satellite imagery. Don't assume it's not erupting, and hang out around the lower slopes. Suwanosejima is exploding, producing a 6,000-foot plume of volcanic ash, flight level 060. Karengatang, 8,000-foot ash plume from Karengatang as it explodes. It's a flight level 080. There you go, Dieng. Let's see. They've actually lowered the volcanic alert level back to level 1. There have been some small earthquakes happening there from 14th of January until the 5th of March. So small activity there, which has waned at Dieng in central Java. Also Semeru nearby, 13,000-foot ash plume from Semeru. It's a flight level 130. Dakono, flight level 070 as Dakono explodes. Also Taupo. So Taupo has had a 4.4 magnitude earthquake, which even created some small tsunamis there in Lake Taupo. Although the seismicity under Taupo has decreased in the past couple of months. Popocatépetl exploding in central Mexico, flight level 190. It's a flight level 190, 19,000-foot ash plume. Fuego exploding in Guatemala, flight level 160. Flight level 230 over Nevado de Ruiz in Colombia. Sangay and Revenador both exploding in Ecuador, 20,000-foot ash plume over Sangay, 15,000-foot ash plume over Revenador, and continuous ash emissions over Peru. From Sabancaya. Please don't pole vault the caldera. Next, looking at seismicity here. So here's the past 90 days. And we didn't have a lot of quakes in the past 24 hours, but some of significant magnitude. So some potent quakes happening, but a low number of quakes overall. As you can see from the map, we're going to report quakes over a 5 magnitude. So at 2059, that's 2059 Universal Time. There was a 5.8 at Fiji at over 520 kilometers estimated depth. At 2224, there was a 5.1 at Japan. Colombia had a 5.0 at 3:59 Universal Time this morning. And the Philippines had the largest quake of the past 24. It was a 6.0 magnitude at 6:02 Universal Time this morning. Also, Indonesia had a 5.3 at 7:31 this morning, and the Philippines experiencing an aftershock of 5.6 magnitude. And let's move on as it's time to get back to space. Here's 304 angstroms by itself for the past 24 hours. And of course, we painstakingly create these helioviewer.org movies to ensure that we keep giving you the best imagery you'll find of the closest star. And thanks for tuning in to the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. So if you haven't done so yet, press that like button, press the notification bell, press subscribe if you're new to the channel. And thanks to our longtime subscribers and our new viewers. If you haven't seen our playlists, check those out. We've created a new playlist recently called Space Weather Rager. So check those out if you haven't. You can also find the 12 Days of Smashmas. And if you didn't see the large X flare the other day, well, it might be our most spectacular imagery ever, at least on a daily space weather video, just a couple of days ago. So check that out. If you haven't seen that, we've also got cosmology segments, Do One Thing, and lots more stuff like smashomash.org presents the sun. So check those out. If you want to support the channel, consider becoming a member of the Smash Team at smashomash.com/Smash Team. There's a gold, there's a silver, there's a bronze, there's even a gold annual paid-up subscription. That's the best value. It includes complimentary merch. Thanks to everybody who's helped support the channel, as the content is suppressed on all social media sites, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Meta's sites. The content is suppressed, must be citing too many facts that don't necessarily add up to the narrative. What the heck was that? I don't know how that happened. Anyway, smashomash.com/Smash Team is our subscription services site. You can find links there. Make sure you log in and click the posts page to see the latest. And here we've put together 335 plus 171 angstroms. Once again, that's the past 24 hours. And we had a little lower radio flux than expected. I was 10 solar flux units off with my forecast there. You see, I admit when I'm incorrect with a forecast, unlike many channels on YouTube who claim to be informing you about space weather. Tamitha Skov not included. Tamitha Skov is legit, but there are some very, very ridiculous channels that think that they're our competition. They aren't. Anyway, the 10.7 is at 188 solar flux units at the moment. We expected it to be at 198 by now. So, yeah, a little bit lower than expected. We're going to have another increase in the sunspot number today, again, because we've got at least 3 new sunspots, and one of them is a significant one. There's a space weather enthusiast dashboard for you. No geomagnetic storms or geomagnetic unrest forecast, although close to geomagnetic unrest conditions are expected today. So there is a coronal hole high-speed stream continuing at the moment. We'll get to the data on that. First, let's take a look at a visualization of Earth's magnetic moment from space. So there's croissant Earth for the past 4 hours. This expresses, if you're new to the channel, this is showing nanopascals, which is magnetohydrodynamic pressure. We are seeing some variations there in the solar wind, which is causing those undulations there in the space weather modeling framework. That's the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space. Here's Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. This one shows magnetic flux density, not magnetohydrodynamic pressure. And of course, since a lot of people are frightened and frankly taking in a lot of disinformation and misinformation and malinformation about Earth's magnetic pole excursion and so on, people are very frightened of it. It should show things on that imagery. Nothing scary there by any stretch. KP index currently at 3.33. 3.33 is the current KP index. The planetary K index is a measurement of global geomagnetism. And next we'll take a look at the real-time solar wind measured by the ACE and Discover out here at Lagrangian point 1. It's about 1 million miles from Earth. And next time it's noontime, just remember that there is a satellite about 1 million miles away, something like 4 lunar distances out in between you and the sun, keeping track of the real-time solar wind. Current conditions are about 562 kilometers per second for the solar wind speed, still elevated here, again, as the coronal hole high-speed stream continues. We also did recently see an uptick in the plasma temperature here. So while we do see the solar wind speed here ticking down, it reached all the way up to nearly 670 kilometers per second. Actually pushing 680 kilometers per second there. Current solar wind density is about 5.7 protons per cubic centimeter. And let's move on to the magnetometers. There are your GOES magnetometers measuring the Earth's magnetic field from their geosynchronous near equatorial orbits. And let's move on to take a look at the heliospheric current sheet. There is a North Pole-oriented current sheet headed this way. By tomorrow's daily space weather video, we expect it to be here. So barring some new sunspots forming in the northeastern limb, we expect Earth to be in a North Pole current sheet. You can see that depicted here in green. South Pole current sheet here depicted in red, rotating out to the west. A sector boundary crossing is likely before tomorrow's daily space weather video. Next, our line of sight field plot. And let's move to coronal holes next. For some reason, that stopped playing because reasons. All right, so there's our coronal hole line of sight plot, and most coronal holes have largely closed up here, so they're not going to be very visible. We'll still show you the 24-hour video in 211 angstroms, just to show you that we're not really seeing them. They are still detected by those polarimeters. This one down here is North Pole. So there is one kind of showing up there on the east. Bring up the last image. So there you can see that North Pole coronal hole right here rotating in. As the sector boundary approaches. And let's move to sunspots next. Kind of an important feature of solar cycles. Some of us would say coronal holes are more important, but sunspots and coronal holes are probably the two most important features. So yeah, that's a lot of sunspots. And we've got 3 new groups right down here in the southeast. We're expecting at least 2 of those to likely get names today. One almost assuredly will get a name. That'll be 3248, 3249 maybe. I don't know. I lose track. And ultimately, the numbers are not important. Let's take a view from our Helio Viewer videos here. Here's another 24-hour video. And lots of sunspots. We'll zoom in a little bit closer here. Frankly, it's tough to fit all the sunspots on the frame at this zoom level because, well, they're at such varying latitudes here at the moment. So that's always exciting. And you can expect to see the sun more and more populated here for quite a while. Probably over another year yet before we reach solar maximum. So to all the YouTube channels that have been telling you for months, if not years, that we're already at solar maximum, just sit back and watch our videos as the sun continues to ramp up. As we're likely to see a cycle here even stronger than solar cycle 23, much less solar cycle 24. Next, energetic particles and flares. Energetic particles here showing no spikes. And we've actually seen the flaring drop down here over the past couple of days. So, let's bring up the 7-day. There you can see some really significant flaring there. And again, that's been ramping down here. So, little downtick there in the X-ray flux overall. It's dropping down to a baseline, low-level C baseline output. Let's take a look at 94 angstroms. So there are multiple sunspots here that could be large flare players. We'll look at the detailed magnetograms toward the end of the video before we get to our meteorology segment. There's 131 angstroms also. And before we continue on, let's take a moment to orient ourselves. So the sun just rose a little while ago here over Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. If you're up before dawn, you may see Mercury and Saturn there near the ecliptic. And if you're up around dusk, you'll see Venus and Jupiter chasing the sun across the ecliptic. After sunset, you can see those 2 bright planets. Here's what's going on in the solar system. Earth is in a lonely place right now. No planets over on this side of the solar system. Let's advance this 1 week. Here's where things will be on the 14th. And before we look at more solar imagery, take a moment to check out the links in the description. If you look at the links below the video, one of the ones you'll find is the link to the Redbubble shop. We put out 4 new designs yesterday. Yeah, 4 of them. So we'll feature one of those today. And if you do click that link below the video to the Redbubble shop, you'll find the products in order of best selling. Today's featured product is the Croissant Earth Society. So when will you stop believing NASA's lies? NASA, it keeps trying to tell people that Earth is an oblate spheroid. And, I mean, how unfortunate that people believe all these lies from NASA. Aren't you aware of Operation Paperclip? Don't you know that NASA was funded by literal Nazis? Are you crazy? NASA, it wants you to believe that the Earth is shaped like a sphere. I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson, obviously a NASA shill, going around telling people that Earth is shaped like a sphere and not the French breakfast pastry. So regular viewers of our channel should be well aware that Earth is shaped like a croissant. I mean, what are you, crazy? You think Earth is an oblate spheroid? You're crazy lunatic NASA lie-believing government shill. When will you stop believing NASA's lies? Face the facts. Earth is shaped like a croissant. You maniac. Okay. Next, looking at some coronagraphs here to check coronal mass ejections. And that's kind of weird. I don't know what's going on with that. Seems jacked up. Anyway, there are yesterday's coronagraphs. And indeed, a significant coronal mass ejection there coming out of the west, the southeast, and the southwest. None of those appear to be earthly directed, though. Let's check out today's frames. There are 33 more frames from today. And nothing significant going on there. Let's take a look at some more videos here from Stereo A's coronagraph. See if we can get any insight into the trajectory of those. Again, they do not appear to be earthly directed. So please pay attention to the time and date stamps down at the bottom. So that first one out of the southwest, that's not earthly directed. The next one out of the southeast, also not earthly directed. And I think we're waiting for one more out of the west here. Well, let's look at our 24-hour videos instead. So there are some composites. That is the past 24 hours. Let's zoom in a little bit closer. And of course, often we see filamentary eruptions where we don't really see the source of it. Sometimes those come from sort of the backish side of the sun. Let's zoom in one more level here. One of the great things about 193 angstroms is that it's great at showing limb darkening. So a lot of times when you see a filament on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk, you'll see the limb darken. That's often associated with flare events as plasma reorients itself. And you can see some activity right up here and some activity over here. Again, we see no halos. Those do not appear to be earthly directed. All right, let's continue on here to look at the filament fest that's going on. So we've got 2 named filaments at the moment. We've got the Brian Keating filament up here, which is quite significant. Also the Nikki Haley filament down here, the Nikki Haley filament. And this one down here perhaps ought to get a name also, as that one is quite significant. And it's kind of in the earthly zone. And maybe this one as well. If you'd like to name filaments after living humans, once again, don't forget to join us over on Twitter. Even if you don't want to name filaments after living humans, just come over for the space weather facts. As we do a lot of things besides space weather over on Twitter. So join us there, as we've been doing the online thing for a long time. So if you don't have a Twitter account, why not get one? It's really where it's at. I mean, you still using Facebook? What are you, a boomer? All right, in all seriousness, here's the past 24 hours in SDO 171 plus 335 angstroms. Shows great variation, active regions, and great depth to the corona. How about the past couple of hours from the NASA GOES 16 SUVI? Of course, the sun is spherical, but the Earth is croissant-shaped. Everybody knows that. All right, a little bit of activity coming out of this area right here. Doesn't look like anything major. Perhaps some activity coming from back here also. I see a little bit of a prominence over there. A filament that overlaps the limb of the solar disk. And let's move on to our bonus features segment. So we've got some satellite charging hazards here, some significant surface charging hazards in the Central Pacific, and some minor internal charging hazards here over the southern Indian Ocean, southern Africa, the western Pacific, and northern Australia. GOES electron flux here reached pretty high levels here. The GOES 18 measured over 10 times the warning levels. And they're both toying with warning levels again today. There is the electron forecast model. And NOAA expecting similar levels of electron flux in the coming days. No argument from me there. Here's the one-year chart to put that in context. Those electrons are measured at the F layer of the ionosphere, which is located at 300 kilometers. And here is the F layer in both vibrational frequency and anomalygram. First, vibrational frequency, megahertz, that's millions of vibrations per second. And here's the previous day anomalygram. That's anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. It'll show high-frequency anomalies in blue, low-frequency anomalies in red. And interestingly, this actually shows you 10 times as much detail as the ionogram, because this shows you anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median to a tenth of a megahertz. So it's showing slightly higher resolution here. And our channel's been showing this for years to create a log of what was going on with the ionosphere. It might actually help for future science. And let's bring up the latest image. There's 12:15 universal time ionogram and 12:15 universal time anomalygram. We'll also take a look at the total electron content. That's the free electrons between your GPS satellite and your handset. These are the most likely places to see GPS errors around the globe. Again, keep in mind there is a coronal hole high-speed stream currently buffeting Earth's magnetosphere. And that does tend to put some electrons a little bit out of place. We're expecting some significant GPS errors once again over North America, indeed. So that's our coupled thermosphere, ionosphere, plasmasphere electrodynamics model there, showing the free electrons from the inner portion of the outer Van Allen belt all the way down to your handset. Last but not least, when it comes to space weather, we'll show the high-res colorized magnetogram and SDO intensitygram. And check it out. 3 new regions here. One, it might be 4 new regions actually, as I see 1. Well, certainly these 3 are new. So there you go. 3 new sunspots there. They all look magnetically simple. Let's try that again. So they are magnetically simple here at the moment. Actually, I think that one's already beta gamma class. And that one up there is just alpha class. That one there is alpha class. And that one is beta gamma class. I think the most likely place to see a major flare at the moment is probably this sunspot right here, as we do see some activity. It is oblong, magnetically speaking. Let's try that again. So there you go. Yeah, that's beta gamma delta class. The most likely sunspot classification to produce a large flare. So lots of noteworthy sunspots there. Some quite large ones as well. And also these groups over here setting on the western limb are magnetically complex. So that's where we'll have to close out the space weather portion of the video. Take a moment to visit the links below the video. Support the channel via clicks. Maybe hit up smashomash.com and visit our links. Hit us up on social media, which is like a barren wasteland as people are unplugging, and frankly, we don't blame them because of the pathetic, putrid, and disgusting censorship on all of the social media platforms. Yeah, including alt tech. I mean, I'm completely unimpressed by alt tech as Apple, Meta, Alphabet, and Twitter have monopolies on their industries. You'll also find a link to the Hemp Lucid shop if you want some free mushroom gummies samples. Hit us up on Twitter. The link to the free mushroom gummies remains pinned on the Twitter profile page, so check that out. You can find links below the video to the Hemp Lucid shop, where you can shop for your favorite CBDs, also various mushroom gummies, immune response products, stress, sleep products, and so on. So check that out. Thanks to everybody who's picked up merch over the past couple of years. And of course, the Hemp Lucid products are certainly spectacularly good. So thanks to everybody who has picked those out. Thanks to Hemp Lucid. And let's get into our meteorology segment. So the first thing we're looking at here are ocean currents and sea surface temperature anomaly. And why? Well, because right here, this is super relevant. You see this? This is a breakup of the anomalously cold equatorial Pacific waters. So that's an indication that La Nina is breaking down and ending. So we can expect to see some more varied weather patterns here, perhaps some, quote, normal, end quote, weather patterns, as if there is such a thing as normal weather patterns. Of course, the only thing that remains constant is change. So anyway, that cold water around the equatorial Pacific here breaking up and becoming more normal temperature. That's sea surface temperature anomalies and currents, by the way. So that's what's going on in Earth's largest surface heat sink, the largest body of water in the planet, the Pacific Ocean. And if you think mankind controls the climate, imagine how many calories it would take to heat up the Pacific Ocean. Water, it has a very high heat latency. That's why we use it in things like hot water heaters. Yeah, it's a heat sink. Anyway, there's the Indian Ocean. There's the Southern Ocean. Don't forget the Atlantic. A quick view of the Gulf Stream if you're wondering if it's shutting down, if you're going to see a year without a summer in Europe. The answer is, well, no, as it's still making it up here to heat up Iceland and Ireland. So to all the alarmist noobs out there that are claiming the Gulf Stream is going to shut down and the Northern Hemisphere is going to freeze, please tell us when. Would that be in another 1,000 years? 300-400 years? Let us know when you claim that's going to happen because, well, it isn't happening. So not only is it not a grand solar minimum, Europe's not going to freeze because the Gulf Stream is still heating up Western Europe. So I don't know. I don't know where these people get this nonsense. I assume they're using it to sell you prepping supplies. Anyway, let's switch to our regularly scheduled meteorology portion. There's what's going on with the surface winds of the eastern world, and here are the jet streams. Jet streams of the western world depicted here. Coherent jet stream over the U.S. at the moment. Surface winds looking like this. It's windy in the North Atlantic. Here are the surface winds of the central world, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. And there are the jet streams. So hopefully that helps you with global weather patterns as we zoom in closer and closer to the lower 48. There's snow on the car in Lehigh Valley right now. This is clouds and fog over the Americas. 3.9 nanometer infrared radiation, part of the NASA GOES Interactive Weather Satellite Suite. And here's your weather.gov map. So head to weather.gov and click on your location if it is illuminated on that map, and illuminate yourself with some facts about what the weather warnings might be. Weather.gov, and here come some forecasts. So here's our temperature anomaly forecast. Expecting some anomalously warm temperatures there around the Gulf Coast in the coming 3 days. That is the 72-hour GFS temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius. The northwestern portion of the country there, expecting anomalously cold temperatures. And the northeastern part of the country, close to average for this time of year. March, it tends to be a pretty lousy month to ride bike. Anyway, there's your pressure and precipitation forecast. Again, that's a GFS 72-hour pressure and precipitation model. We show 72-hour forecasts because they tend to be accurate. And more precipitation continues to show up at California as the Pacific keeps pumping more and more moisture, trying to slide California straight off of the North American continent and into the ocean. Since some of that precipitation will be as snow, portions of California, they're expecting another 1.5 feet. This is your accumulated positive snow depth change forecast in inches. It is based on the same model, the GFS 72-hour. Additional snow coming to Pennsylvania. Always interesting. And let's take a look at windy.com. So here is the difference between the Euro and GFS models for new snow. That's the GFS. Well done, Smash staff. Well done. Yes, don't just kick the box, knock the painting off the wall as well. And then don't even stand it back up. Just let it lean against the box. Well done. So here's the GFS model for new snow for the next 3 days. And there is the Euro model for new snow for the next 3 days. It looks like it's a pretty sure thing we're going to see more snow in Lehigh Valley. So both models there showing some snow. Again, that's the GFS model. And there is the Euro model. Looking fairly consistent here, except in the central part of the country where they look vastly different. Anyway, let's move on to our lightning mapper. Quite a lot of lightning there around Central and Northern South America, also in the North Atlantic, but not in the U.S. Not a lot of lightning at all. Let's check current strikes. It's our real-time lightning map from lightningmaps.org. And quite a bit of lightning there in the North Atlantic. It's windy and stormy out there in the Atlantic Ocean. Perhaps a bad day to be on a boat with Marky Mark Wahlberg and George Clooney. Continuing on to our U.S. Doppler radar map. There's the full 50-state view. And here's the lower 48 view. Here is clouds and fog over a largely dark nation. And as far as information, it's like the Dark Ages. And remember, folks, March is the 3-year anniversary of the dissolution of the freedoms of being an American. So masks and lockdowns and so on. Never forget, remember, and hold accountable. Forgive, remember, and hold accountable, because holding a grudge is like ingesting poison and expecting the other person to die. That's your water vapor map for the lower 48. Here's your recap. Vertical motion in the air column depicted there by ground-based Doppler radar systems. 3.9 nanometer shortwave radiation emitted by clouds and fog and detected by the NASA GOES satellite. And there is the water vapor map showing all the water vapor. And it looks like clear skies over Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. And fixing to be a clear day over Georgia as well, as dry air is moving in. And dry facts are popular on our channel and maybe not so popular on the rest of YouTube, as YouTube promotes disinformation, fraud, nonsense, propaganda, and a bunch of crap. We hope you're not consuming too much of that crap. Thanks for tuning in to the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. I've been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off. And may that solar wind be at your back. Please visit links depicted here and here and here.